The clang of steel echoed through the gym, a rhythmic symphony of plates and breath. It was 6 a.m. in Norfolk, Virginia, and the world still yawned awake outside. Inside, a small group of early risers moved through their workouts, their headphones drowning out the hum of fluorescent lights. In one corner, a woman stretched silently beside the squat rack, her movements deliberate, controlled, almost meditative. Her name was Lieutenant Kara Hastings. No one in that gym knew much about her. She never talked about her job, rarely made eye contact, and never joined the chatter by the mirrors. To most, she was just another quiet regular, fit, serious, and always gone before the rush hour crowd arrived. But to those who paid attention, there was something different about her, something in the way she moved. Her balance was too perfect, her focus too sharp. She handled weights not with aggression, but precision. Each repetition looked like part of a disciplined ritual. Kara had chosen this small-town gym deliberately. It was far from the base, and more importantly, far from questions. After years of service, 3 tours, 1 classified rescue mission, and countless nights of restless silence, she wanted peace. The military world had been her home since she was 18, and the Navy SEALs had forged her into something beyond ordinary human endurance. But lately, she'd been craving something else: quiet, normalcy, the simple rhythm of life without commands, missions or loss. The other members didn't know that the petite woman who benched silently in the corner could shoot a target blindfolded at 200 yards. They didn't know she'd once carried a wounded comrade 3 miles through enemy fire. They saw a woman with a ponytail, earbuds, and leggings, not the war she carried in her bones. And that was fine with her. That morning felt normal enough. The smell of chalk and rubber mats hung in the air. The radio murmured some country song about small towns and freedom. Kara adjusted the plates on her barbell and began her next set, her breathing steady, controlled inhale, explosive exhale. For a moment, she was nowhere else. Not in Afghanistan. Not on the tarmac, watching soldiers board a transport plane. Just here, now, grounding herself in repetition. Then the noise started. 3 men, new faces in the gym, walked in with loud laughter that didn't fit the hour. Contractors, by the look of them, military haircuts, gin shirts stretched across bulked arms, and that overconfident swagger of men who thought the world revolved around their stories. They threw their bags in a heap near the squat rack and immediately started talking loud enough for everyone to hear. Kara didn't look up. She'd learned long ago that some people thrived on attention, and silence disarmed them better than words. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them called across the floor, pretending to stretch. "You done with that rack?" Kara paused mid-set, then simply nodded, finishing her last rep. She wiped down the bar and moved aside, saying nothing. Her calm irritated them more than rudeness could have. As she walked past, another muttered just loud enough, "Guess she's too busy flexing for her OnlyFans." They laughed, the kind of laughter that comes easy when you think no one will challenge it. Kara kept walking, though her jaw tightened. She'd endured worse. She'd been underestimated her entire career. From the first day of Bud ES training, she'd heard it all. "You'll never last a week. This isn't a place for women." But she'd lasted. She'd endured freezing water, sand, and darkness. She'd buried teammates. She'd earned her trident. And now, back home, she wasn't about to be broken by 3 immature men who thought disrespect was a sport. Still, the tension simmered under her skin. A few minutes later, she moved to the deadlift platform beside them. They'd left their weights scattered around, and one of them, the tallest, blocked her path while joking with his friends. She waited patiently, hoping he'd notice. He didn't. She cleared her throat, polite but firm. "Excuse me," she said. He turned slowly, smirking. "Oh, I didn't see you there. You're standing on my platform, she said evenly. He stepped aside, exaggeratedly dramatic. My bad, Nam, he said, dragging out the word Nam like an insult. His friends chuckled. Kara ignored them again, reset her stance, and lifted. Form perfect, expression neutral. 135 pounds. 175. 200. The weights rose smoothly, back straight, motion clean. It was the kind of lift only experience and precision could teach. But instead of being impressed, one of the men whispered something crude under his breath. They laughed again. Their laughter was sharp, cutting through the air like a challenge. A gym employee glanced their way, hesitated, then looked away. Nobody wanted to get involved. That's how it always went. Kara finished her final set, unclipped her weights, and tried to leave it behind. She wasn't here to prove anything. She wasn't here to fight. She'd fought enough for a lifetime. But as fate would have it, they weren't done. Later that evening, when she came back for her evening cardio, the same three men were still there. This time, they were louder, joking and shoving each other between sets. One was on the bench press beside her when it happened. He turned suddenly mid-lift, careless, and his elbow cracked straight into her face. The impact was sharp and immediate. She stumbled back, pain flashing bright behind her eyes. The man froze for half a second, then smirked. Oh, didn't see you there, he said, echoing his earlier sarcasm. His friends snickered. The room went quiet. A small trickle of blood slid down Kara's lip. She didn't wipe it. She just looked at him, not with rage, but with the kind of calm that made the air heavier. There was something unsettling about the stillness in her eyes, like deep water that could drown you if you looked too long. He shifted, uncomfortable. Hey, relax, it was an accident. Kara finally spoke, voice low but steady. You just made a serious mistake. Then she turned, grabbed her towel, and walked away. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The tension in that gym was electric. Everyone could feel it, though few understood why. To the men, it looked like she'd backed down. To Kara, it was restraint, the kind she'd trained her entire career to master. Because a SEAL knew the difference between reaction and response. The true fight wasn't against fists, it was against impulse. Still, as she walked out into the cold Virginia night, she could feel her heart pounding with something she hadn't felt in years, the familiar rush before combat. And deep inside, she knew the truth. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The mirror above the gym's dumbbell rack reflected more than sweat and effort that night. It captured arrogance, ignorance, and the slow-brewing consequences of both. The man who had elbowed Kara, his name was Cole Danner, a civilian contractor working at the nearby Navy facility, didn't realize yet that his life had just collided with something far greater than his own ego. Kara had walked out without a word, but her silence had weight. Everyone in the gym felt it. For a few seconds after she left, the entire place was silent. Even the music seemed quieter. Then, as if nothing had happened, Cole laughed it off, shrugging to his friends. Man, she's gotta chill. It was an accident, he muttered. Yeah, another said. These fitness chicks get all defensive. Probably some desk worker at the base. Cole grinned, slamming his dumbbells onto the rack. She should be thankful I didn't break her jaw. A few people glanced their way, but said nothing. Nobody wanted drama. And Kara, the woman they mocked, was already gone. Outside, the night air was cold, but Kara barely felt it. Her heart beat steadily, though a faint throb pulsed under her cheekbone where the elbow had landed. She touched it lightly. No fracture, no swelling, just the sting of carelessness. But the physical pain wasn't what lingered. It was the flash that came right after. A memory, uninvited and sharp, like a blade drawn from a sheath. It was Afghanistan, a narrow alley in a burning village. Her team was pinned down, and she'd been the only one still standing after the explosion. The sound of Cole's mocking laughter blended with a distant memory of insurgents shouting in another language. The same tone, arrogant, careless, sure they were in control. Kara blinked hard, grounding herself back in the present. She wasn't in Kandahar anymore. She wasn't a soldier in a war zone. She was in Virginia, outside a gym, surrounded by people who had no idea what she'd lived through. Still, the line between the two worlds blurred sometimes. That night, back in her apartment, she sat cross-legged on the floor, her gym bag still beside her. The apartment was minimal. One couch, a table, and a framed photo of her SEAL team. 11 faces. 10 smiles. One name on a headstone. Kara traced her thumb over the photo's edge. "Caleb," she whispered softly, her voice cracking the silence. "You'd tell me to let it go, wouldn't you?" Caleb Morgan had been her team leader, the one who'd believed she belonged in the program when no one else did. He'd once told her, "Hastings, strength isn't about the fight. It's about what you choose not to fight." She'd learned to live by that. But tonight, that lesson felt heavier than usual. Her phone buzzed. A message from her therapist, Dr. Lydia Walsh. "Remember to practice grounding, breathing, stay in control when triggers appear." Kara exhaled slowly. She'd been through enough sessions to recognize what was happening. Trauma trying to slip back in through a crack. She stood, closed her eyes, and began a breathing cycle. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Her muscles loosened. Her heartbeat slowed. Still, beneath that calm, a quiet anger smoldered. Not the wild, reckless kind, but the cold, focused kind that only trained soldiers understood. She wasn't angry about being hit. She was angry because of what it revealed. How easily people still dismissed women. How ignorance thrived in places that should have known better, even in a town shadowed by Navy flags. By midnight, she'd convinced herself it was over. She'd go to the gym tomorrow, do her training, and forget it ever happened. She was stronger than her past, stronger than the whispers, stronger than her temper. Or so she thought. The next morning, life moved on as if nothing had happened. The sun painted the harbor gold, and Kara's world returned to routine. Oatmeal, coffee, a jog along the pier. The air smelled of salt and diesel. The rhythm of the sea had always calmed her. She'd chosen Norfolk for that reason. The water felt like home, constant and cleansing. At the gym, though, the energy shifted. Conversation stopped when she entered. People looked, then looked away. A few nodded respectfully. Others whispered. The elbow incident had already traveled, not as truth, but as rumor. She could hear snippets. "That's the girl from last night. He said she overreacted. He barely touched her." Kara didn't care. She wasn't here to win opinions. But Cole was. He was by the bench press again, flanked by his 2 friends, talking louder than usual. A calculated show. "Oh, look," he said when she passed. "It's Miss Sensitive. You okay today, sweetheart? Need me to keep my elbows to myself?" Laughter followed. Kara stopped mid-step. Slowly, she turned her head. Her eyes met his, calm, steady, unreadable. "Maybe just learn to control your surroundings," she said, her tone soft but pointed. "Maybe you should learn to take a joke," he shot back. One of his friends added, "Guess Navy training doesn't include a sense of humor." She didn't answer. She simply held his gaze for 3 quiet seconds, then walked to the far corner of the gym and resumed her workout. That's when the first witnesses realized something strange. The way she moved wasn't normal. Her form was perfect. Her footwork silent. Every lift, every breath, precise, tactical. She wasn't exercising. She was training. And though she said nothing, her silence carried weight, a kind that made even Cole shift uneasily. Later, as the session ended, Kara packed her bag while glancing briefly toward the group. They were still laughing, oblivious. She slipped out quietly, her face calm, her pace measured. She didn't know that one of the gym's security cameras had recorded the previous night, the elbow, the smirk, the blood. And that soon, that footage would find its way into the wrong, or perhaps the right hands. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight, something else was stirring. At home, Kara opened her notebook, the one she rarely let anyone see. Inside were fragments, thoughts, reflections, lines from her training. On a blank page, she wrote 5 words. Control is not surrender, survive. She stared at the words for a long time. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere far off, a ship's horn echoed across the bay. She imagined the sound as Caleb's voice, distant but grounding. And yet, a quiet certainty formed in her chest. Cole Danner thought last night was over. But for Kara Hastings, it was just the first warning. The next time they crossed paths, it wouldn't end with an elbow. It would end with understanding. In the coming days, that understanding would arrive, painfully, publicly, and permanently. Because when arrogance collides with discipline, there's only one side that walks away unharmed. And though Kara didn't know it yet, the events of that night would soon travel far beyond the gym's walls, straight into the corridors of Navy Command itself. But for now, in that small Virginia town, she remained the quiet woman in the corner, steady, calm, and waiting. Waiting not for revenge, but for justice to reveal itself. And it always did, eventually. Sleep came slow for Kara Hastings that night, and when it did, it wasn't peace that found her. It was memory. The mind of a soldier never really left the field. It only waited for darkness to turn ordinary silence into echoes of war. She was back in Kandahar. The heat was unbearable, the air thick with sand and diesel. Her team moved through a narrow alley, rifles up, senses razor-sharp. Caleb led from the front, signaling hand motions. Quiet, deliberate. Then came the blast. A flash of orange. The ground opened beneath them, and everything disappeared into chaos. Kara's body jerked in her bed. Her breathing quickened, her hands clenching the sheets as her mind replayed the sound of men screaming, of bullets pinging off walls, of Caleb's last words. "Move, Hastings, move." She gasped awake. Sweat drenched her shirt. The apartment was dark and silent, save for the low hum of the refrigerator. Her chest rose and fell like she'd run a mile. She looked at the clock to 3:12 a.m. For a moment, she just sat there, breathing, reminding herself where she was. Norfolk, apartment 17B. Safe, but safe, was a word that rarely meant anything to someone who had lived where safety didn't exist. She walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. Her reflection stared. Back at her in the window, the same eyes that once stared through a scope, the same body that had carried brothers through hell. Yet the world around her had softened. Civilians lived by rules she no longer understood, smiling through disrespect, ignoring what should never be ignored. That elbow, that smirk, that careless laugh, it wasn't just about insult. It was a reminder of what she'd fought her entire career to prove, that strength had no gender, no face, no explanation. Kara turned off the light and sat on the couch. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, almost under her breath, she whispered, "You think you can hit me and walk away laughing?" The words weren't anger, they were focus. And deep down, something inside her was waking up, something sharp, disciplined, and patient. The next morning dawned gray. The coastal air carried a chill that hinted at early spring. Kara jogged along the pier before sunrise, her body moving on autopilot while her mind ran elsewhere. The sound of her shoes hitting the wooden planks synced with her pulse, steady, methodical. Every SEAL learned to compartmentalize, to separate emotion from mission. But what happened when the mission was the emotion? She couldn't exactly report this one. There was no enemy to neutralize, no objective to capture. Just a reminder that disrespect could exist even in peace. At the end of the pier, she stopped and looked out over the water. The ocean was calm, deceptive, like her. She closed her eyes and remembered Caleb's voice again. Hastings, control the tempo, always. Control. That was the word that defined her life. Not rage, not revenge, control. When she arrived at the gym later that morning, something had shifted. The regulars looked at her differently now, curious, wary. A few nodded respectfully. One older man, a retired Marine, muttered, "Heard about last night." "You all right, Lieutenant?" She smiled faintly. "I'm fine, sir. Just another day." But Cole Danner and his two friends were there again, louder than ever, feeding off attention. They were leaning against the dumbbell rack, trading jokes. Cole caught her eye and grinned. "Well, look who's back. Didn't scare you off, huh?" Kara didn't even blink. She set her bag down, plugged in her earbuds, and started warming up. The music in her ears wasn't music at all. It was a recorded breathing drill her therapist had given her. Calm, rhythmic, controlled. But from the corner of her eye, she could see them watching. Cole nudged one of his friends. "Think she's going to hit me with a yoga mat?" The others laughed. Every word chipped away at the restraint she'd built like armor. But she reminded herself, control, always control. She moved through her sets like a machine, squats, presses, deadlifts. The men's laughter blurred into background noise. For a moment, she almost forgot them, until she caught a reflection in the mirror, Cole pointing at her, smirking. That's when she noticed something else. The gym's head trainer watching from the front desk, eyes sharp. He saw it too. Kara finished her set, wiped her hands, and approached him quietly. "Hey, Mark," she said. "You've got cameras here, right?" He nodded, cautious. "Yeah, why?" "Just wondering," she said softly. "For safety." Mark gave her a look that said he understood more than she said aloud. "Everything's recorded?" he replied. Kara nodded once and walked away. She didn't need to ask for help. She never had. But part of her wanted the truth documented, not for herself, but for the lesson that would come. That evening, as she drove home, she passed the Navy base gates, tall, iron, and familiar. For a brief moment, she considered driving in, asking to see Commander Leland, her former CO. But she dismissed the thought. The military world had taught her discipline, not dependence. Still, that night, she couldn't resist opening an old locker box. Inside were fragments of her service. Her SEAL trident, her bronze star, a folded American flag, and a photo of her unit. She ran her finger over the cold metal of the insignia. She remembered the words Leland had said when pinning it to her chest. "This isn't for fighting, Hastings. It's for knowing when not to." She smiled faintly. "Guess I'm still learning," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Rain began to fall against the window, tapping like small reminders that storms start quietly. By the time she returned to the gym 2 nights later, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. People knew something was coming. Kara wasn't the type to hold grudges, but she also wasn't the type to forget. Cole and his friends were by the treadmills now, bragging about something. The moment Kara entered, Cole smirked. "Hey, look who's back. Miss Navy tough girl." A few people glanced up, uncomfortable. No one said a word. Kara walked past them, calm as ever. She placed her bag on the floor, tied her hair back, and began her stretches. But inside, her instincts were coiled tight. Every sense on alert, every movement measured. Years of combat. Training lived just under her skin, waiting, not for violence, but for precision. Cole's friend made the mistake of stepping into her space, mock flexing. "Come on, don't look so serious. We're just having fun." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Fun?" she said softly. "You should choose better hobbies." The man laughed nervously, but something in her tone, cold, surgical, made his smile fade. Cole muttered under his breath, "She thinks she's scary." Kara finished her set, grabbed her towel, and walked toward the exit. But before she reached the door, she stopped, looked over her shoulder, and said one quiet sentence that froze everyone who heard it. "You boys ever wonder why silence makes some people nervous?" Then she walked out, leaving the room in stunned quiet. That night, the storm outside turned violent. Lightning flashed through her apartment window as Kara sat by the table, cleaning the old watch Caleb had given her. She could feel the old world and the new colliding inside her, the soldier and the civilian, the peacekeeper and the protector. She knew tomorrow would bring something different. Things like this didn't end with words, not when arrogance refused to learn, and she was ready, not for revenge, but for the moment when lesson met consequence. Because every SEAL knew, some enemies weren't fought with weapons. They were fought with control, and when control ran out, judgment began. The rain had stopped by dawn, but the streets of Norfolk still glistened under the pale orange glow of the streetlights. Kara Hastings stood by her apartment window, sipping black coffee, her reflection caught between shadow and sunrise. Sleep hadn't visited her. Instead, she'd spent the night replaying the same thought, the line between control and reaction. She'd been trained to anticipate threats, to read body language, to wait until there was no other choice. But sometimes, waiting wasn't peace. Sometimes it was permission for cruelty to grow. She looked down at her phone. A message from Mark, the gym's head trainer. "You might want to come by today. We need to talk." Cameras caught everything. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Everything. That meant more than just the fight. It meant the disrespect, the mocking, the tension that everyone else ignored. Kara finished her coffee, grabbed her jacket, and headed out into the cool morning air. By 8 a.m., the gym was already alive. Music thumping, weights clanging, the air thick with chalk and sweat. Kara walked in with quiet authority. The regulars noticed immediately. Her stride was slower, deliberate, like someone walking into a briefing, not a workout. Mark was waiting near the front desk. His expression was serious. "Kara," he said, motioning toward his office. "You need to see this." She followed him inside. The blinds were drawn, the air humming with the low buzz of a computer screen. Mark clicked play. The security footage rolled. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough. Cole Danner, his friends, their words, their jeers. The shove. The elbow. The laughter. It played out like a slow unraveling of arrogance. When it ended, Mark turned to her. "I already reported this to the gym owner. They're suspended, maybe banned for good. But I thought you'd want to know." Kara watched the frozen image on the screen. Cole mid-laugh, unaware of the camera capturing every inch of his mockery. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled faintly. "Justice comes in strange forms," she said softly. Mark hesitated. "You're not planning anything, are you?" Kara turned toward him, calm as ever. "No," she said, "but I am planning to train." The rest of the morning passed quietly, too quietly. Kara kept her focus on her sets, pushing harder than usual. Every rep was a release, every drop of sweat another piece of anger leaving her body. By noon, the gym had thinned out, But Cole and his crew appeared again. Apparently, word of their suspension hadn't reached them yet. Cole strutted in wearing a sleeveless hoodie, his confidence unshaken. When he saw Kara by the punching bag, his grin returned. "Oh, she's still here. Guess they didn't kick you out after all." Mark spotted him from across the floor, ready to intervene, but Kara raised a hand, a silent signal that said, "I've got this." Cole leaned on a bench, watching her throw a flawless combination: jab, cross, uppercut, pivot, hook. The bag rocked with each hit, chains rattling overhead. "Damn," one of his friends muttered. "She hits hard." Cole smirked. Yeah, for a girl. That was it. The air went still. Even the background music felt distant. Kara removed her gloves slowly, hung them on the rack, and turned around. Her eyes met his, calm, controlled, but there was something underneath, not rage, not fear, just resolve. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" she said quietly. Cole laughed, stepping closer. "What are you gonna do? Lecture me?" He didn't see it coming. Kara didn't strike first, not yet. She stepped into his space, just enough to make him uncomfortable, and said, "You ever been in a real fight, Cole? One where you didn't have an audience?" His smile faltered for the first time. "You threatening me?" She tilted her head. "No, I'm educating you." He tried to laugh it off, glancing at his friends. Man, she's crazy. But something about her composure, the way her stance shifted slightly, the measured distance between them, triggered an instinct even he didn't understand. He tried to back up, but she was already moving. He swung first. A wide, clumsy punch born of ego, not technique. She ducked under it effortlessly, pivoted, and used his own momentum to send him sprawling to the floor with a simple shoulder throw. The gym went silent. Cole hit the mat hard, breath knocked out of him. He scrambled to his feet, red-faced. You're insane." He gasped. Kara didn't move. "No," she said softly. "I'm trained." He lunged again. This time, she sidestepped, caught his wrist, twisted, a clean disarm motion, followed by a controlled knee to his chest that sent him back down. Her movements weren't angry. They were surgical, every strike precise, every step deliberate. Years of combat discipline flowed through her like muscle memory. Cole wheezed on the ground, stunned and humiliated. His friends hovered, unsure whether to step in or back away. Kara crouched down beside him, her voice low enough only for him to hear. "You think strength is about hitting first. It's not. It's about knowing when you don't have to." She stood, turned, and walked away, leaving him gasping, broken, but alive. Outside, the afternoon sun had burned through the clouds. Kara stepped into the light, feeling the warmth on her face. She inhaled deeply, letting the tension dissolve into the air. Mark rushed out after her. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said, adjusting her jacket. He nodded toward the door. "They're calling the cops." "You want me to?" "No," she interrupted. "Let them. The cameras show everything." Mark hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You handled it like—" "Well, like a seal." Kara gave a small laugh. Old habits die hard. Later that evening, she sat by the waterfront, watching the waves roll in. The city buzzed faintly in the distance, but all she heard was the rhythm of the tide. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She opened it. "You think this is over? You messed with the wrong guy. Cole, of course." She read it twice, then deleted it. No reply. No fear. Instead, she pulled out her dog tag, worn and scratched from years of service. The name still clear. Hastings, K. SEAL Team 9. She ran her thumb over the metal and whispered, control, always. But fate wasn't done testing her yet. 2 nights later, she was leaving the grocery store when she spotted a familiar black truck parked across the lot. 3 silhouettes inside. The same laughter she'd come to recognize drifted through the night. She didn't flinch. She just kept walking, grocery bag in hand. Her boots echoed softly on the asphalt. The truck door opened. Cole stepped out, bruised but grinning. "Hey, soldier girl." "Round 2? Kara stopped halfway to her car, the parking lot lights casting long shadows around them. She placed the bag gently on the hood, then turned. "Round 2? She said evenly. "You sure you're ready for that?" He took a step forward, and his friends followed. 3 against 1. But she didn't back up. Not 1 inch. The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of thunder from far away. The same sound that had followed her through Afghanistan's deserts, through missions where hesitation meant death. Her heart rate didn't rise. Her breath stayed calm. Cole sneered. "You think you scare me?" Kara's eyes met his. "No, I think you don't know what fear really is." And as the first raindrops began to fall again, the storm she'd held back for days finally came for him. The first drops of rain hit the pavement with a slow, deliberate rhythm, like a warning. The grocery store parking lot was nearly empty now, except for the lone hum of a flickering streetlight and the faint thunder rolling from the distance. Kara Hastings stood still beside her car, the faint reflection of the truck's headlights gleaming in her calm eyes. The air smelled of rain and gasoline, heavy and tense. Cole Danner stepped forward, flanked by his 2 friends, Travis and Brent. Their laughter was rough, forced, a kind of laughter that tried to disguise fear. He called out, "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone and walk away?" Kara said nothing. Her voice, when it finally came, was soft, almost too calm. "I didn't humiliate you, Cole. You did that yourself." He took another step, fists clenched, rain starting to soak through his hoodie. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Kara's gaze didn't waver. "No, I think I'm someone who's tired of bullies." The words hit harder than any punch. Cole's jaw tightened. His ego, bruised beyond reason, overpowered whatever restraint he had left. "You don't get to talk to me like that," he shouted, and then, suddenly, he charged. Kara moved like water, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Years of training kicked in, pure instinct. She sidestepped his rush, pivoted, and used his own momentum to drive him past her, straight into the side of a parked car with a hollow clang. He groaned, stumbled back, wild with anger. His friends froze, unsure whether to help or run. "Stay out of it," Kara warned, voice low and sharp like a blade's edge. But Travis, the shorter, stockier one, stepped forward anyway. "She's just one woman, man. Let's end this." Kara's hand lifted, open, palm forward. "You don't want to do this." They didn't listen. Travis lunged. She ducked, caught his wrist mid-strike, twisted, one fluid motion, and swept his leg. He hit the ground hard, the air knocked clean out of him. Before he could move, she pressed a knee to his shoulder, immobilizing him effortlessly. "You done?" she asked quietly. He gasped. "What? What are you?" "Someone who's giving you a chance to walk away." She released him, rose smoothly, and turned to face Cole again. Rain now poured harder, glistening on the pavement. Her black jacket clung to her shoulders, her breath steady, her posture solid, a fortress of discipline. Cole spat blood, his pride shattered but his rage alive. "You think you can take all of us?" Kara didn't blink. "I don't think," she said. "I know." For a split second, thunder drowned everything. The sky cracked open, lightning illuminating the lot in stark white light. And then chaos erupted. Brent tried to rush her from the side, swinging a bottle he'd grabbed from the truck. She caught his wrist mid-air, twisted, the bottle shattered harmlessly against the ground. Before he could recover, she stepped inside his guard, elbowed his ribs, and dropped him with a clean takedown. Cole came next, roaring like an animal. But Kara wasn't fighting. She was surviving efficiently, decisively. She blocked his punch, drove her palm into his sternum, and sent him stumbling back again. He swung wildly, but she weaved under his arm and countered with a single strike, not meant to injure, just to stop. And it worked. He froze, clutching his chest, gasping for breath, disbelief written across his face. She stood over him, breathing evenly, rain running down her face. "You're done, Cole. Go home." But he shook his head, furious tears mixing with rain. "No, you don't get to walk away from me." He reached behind him, pulling something from his waistband. For one sharp second, Kara's instincts screamed, weapon. Her muscles tensed, ready to react. But when he lifted it, it wasn't a gun. It was a knife. A short, serrated folding blade, ugly and shaking in his trembling hand. Kara's voice went cold. "You're making this worse than it has to be." He stepped forward, desperation replacing arrogance. "You made me do this." The rain blurred everything now, thunder echoing across the lot. Kara's pulse slowed, not from fear, but from focus. Every sense sharpened. Her surroundings, the distance, his stance, the slick ground, all calculated in a split second. When he lunged, she moved. He thrust forward, clumsy but fast. She parried his wrist with her forearm, sidestepped and twisted, disarming him cleanly. The knife clattered to the pavement, skidding under a car. In the same movement, she pushed him backward, spinning him off balance, and he fell hard into a puddle. Kara stayed crouched, eyes locked on him, ready to respond if he moved again. But he didn't. He just stared up at her, rain hitting his face, breath ragged, humiliation, now replaced by something else. Fear. "Who the hell are you?" He croaked. Kara straightened slowly, her expression unreadable. "Someone you should have walked away from." Then, finally, the flashing red and blue lights arrived, police sirens slicing through the storm. Someone must have called during the commotion. Cole's friends scrambled to explain, but the officers were already separating everyone. The knife on the ground, the bruises, the video cameras above the store. The evidence was all there. Kara didn't resist when an officer approached her. She just handed over her ID calmly. "Lieutenant Kara Hastings," the officer read, eyebrows raising slightly. "Navy?" "Retired," she said simply. The officer looked at her, then at the three men, soaked, bruised, and trembling. He didn't need the full story to understand. "You defending yourself?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. "Then you've got nothing to worry about." Hours later, the chaos faded. Kara sat in her car, engine off, rain still whispering against the windshield. Her reflection in the glass looked tired but unbroken. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark again. "Heard what happened. Cops said you handled it perfectly. Proud of you." Kara allowed herself the faintest smile. She typed back only 2 words. Control held. She leaned back in her seat, exhaling deeply. The storm was gone now, the night quieter, peaceful in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Outside, the parking lot glowed faintly under the soft orange lamps. The world seemed smaller, calmer. The fight, the noise, the fear, all of it had passed. But inside, Kara knew something deeper had shifted. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming her control, proving to herself that even after years of combat, of trauma, of burying the soldier inside her, she could still face darkness without letting it own her. Somewhere across town, Cole sat in the back of a police cruiser, drenched and defeated. He stared blankly out the window, wrists cuffed, pride shattered. One of the officers leaned against the car, shaking his head. "Picked the wrong person to mess with tonight, huh?" Cole didn't answer. He just muttered, "She moved like she'd done this before." The officer gave a small smirk. "That's because she has." As dawn began to break, Kara drove toward the harbor. The world was washed clean again, streets shimmering, the sky pale with the first hint of morning light. She parked by the pier, got out, and stood at the edge of the water. The sea stretched endlessly before her, calm, steady, powerful. She took a slow breath and whispered to herself, "Peace isn't silence. It's surviving the noise." The tide rolled in softly, touching the soles of her boots. And for the first time in a long time, Kara Hastings, former Navy SEAL, survivor, fighter, smiled. The war inside her had finally met its truest victory, not in battle, but in restraint. The sun broke through the clouds the next morning, washing the city in clean gold. The storm had passed, but the world hadn't gone quiet, not for Kara Hastings. By the time she woke, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, messages, voicemails. A dozen from Mark, 2 from local law enforcement, and 1 from a number she hadn't seen in years, a Navy contact. She sat at the edge of her bed, hair still damp from the night before, and scrolled through the flood of notifications. Local news alert. Parking lot assault thwarted by former Navy officer. Headline below it. Witness says woman fought off 3 attackers single-handedly. Her stomach sank. Kara didn't want fame. She'd lived her life in the shadows, in classified missions and anonymous service. But the world had a way of digging. By dawn, someone had leaked her name. By morning, her past was public. Mark called first. "Kara, it's everywhere," he said breathlessly. "The footage, the police statement, it's all over the news. They're calling you the parking lot protector or something." Kara sighed, rubbing her temples. "That's ridiculous." "I know," he said, "but it's viral. You're trending online. Reporters are at the gym asking for interviews." "Then tell them nothing," she said firmly. "This isn't a story. Maybe not to you," Mark said quietly, "but to a lot of women out there, it is." His words hung in the air. Kara said nothing. By noon, a news van parked outside her apartment complex. Cameras waited like vultures. She peered through her blinds and shook her head. The past she'd tried so hard to bury, her identity as a SEAL, was now public knowledge. The classified missions, the commendations, the quiet trauma, all reduced to headlines. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Commander Elias Voss, her former superior from SEAL Team 9, the man who trained her, trusted her, and in many ways saved her life. "Kara," his gravelly voice came through the speaker. "Hell of a mess you've got yourself into." She exhaled slowly. "It wasn't supposed to be a mess, sir." "I saw the footage," Voss said. "Clean technique. Controlled. You handled it like a professional. Didn't feel like it." "That's because you're still human," he said simply. Then his tone softened. "Listen, you're going to have to brace yourself. Once the public finds out what you did overseas, the media's going to come running. They'll want the legend, not the truth." Kara leaned back in her chair, staring at the dog tags hanging beside her kitchen counter. "Then they'll be disappointed." Voss chuckled faintly. "I doubt that." Hours later, a knock echoed on her door. Sharp, polite, not a reporter's knock. She opened it to find Detective Raymond Ortiz, the same officer from the parking lot. He gave a small nod. "Afternoon, Lieutenant." "Just Kara now," she corrected. He smiled faintly. "Right. "Just Kara. Mind if I come in?" She stepped aside. He glanced around, the neat apartment, the minimal furniture, the military precision, and how everything was placed. "You know, I've seen a lot of fights," he began. "But what you did last night, it wasn't anger. It was discipline." Kara crossed her arms. "Discipline's all I've got left." He handed her a folder. Official statements finalized. Cole Danner's in custody. Aggravated assault, possession of a weapon, attempted battery. His friends confirmed your version of events. She nodded once. "Good. But there's more," Ortiz continued. "One of his buddies leaked the footage online. It's got millions of views now. Everyone's asking who you are. When they found out, well, let's just say the Navy PR office is having a busy day." Kara sighed. "Let them have their day." Ortiz studied her for a moment. "You know, my sister's a Marine. She called me this morning after seeing the video. Said, finally, someone showed them what control looks like." Kara's eyes softened. "Your sister's smart." "She is," he said. "And I think you just gave a lot of people hope, even if you didn't mean to." He stood, buttoned his coat, and added, "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I think you did the right thing." She gave a faint smile. "That's the only kind of thing worth doing." By the end of the day, Kara's quiet world had become a battlefield again. But this time, the enemy was attention. Her inbox overflowed with interview requests. CNN, Fox, local Virginia press, podcasts. Some wanted to honor her. Others wanted to dissect her. She ignored them all. That evening, she went for a run along the waterfront, her sanctuary. The air was cool, the sound of her footsteps syncing with the rhythm of the waves. But peace never lasted long. Halfway through her route, she noticed a car following slowly behind her on the empty street. Its headlights dimmed. Her pulse quickened. Old instincts returned like muscle memory. She turned down a side alley, narrow, quiet. The car stopped at the corner. A man stepped out, not Cole, not a reporter, older, clean-cut, government suit. He called out, "Lieutenant Hastings?" She stopped, eyes sharp. "Depends who's asking." He flashed a badge, Department of Defense Liaison Office. "Agent Hillman. I'm here on behalf of Naval Command. Mind if we walk?" Kara hesitated, then nodded slowly. As they walked by the dark waterfront, he spoke calmly. "Your story has reached the Pentagon. They're impressed, but also concerned." "Concerned?" She echoed. "Your combat training, the disarmament. It's all textbook SEAL. Some of it still classified. They'd rather not have every civilian in America asking why a special operations officer was trained in those methods." Kara gave a short, humorless laugh. "So they want me to disappear again." "Not disappear," Hillman said carefully. "Just stay quiet. No interviews, no social media. They'll handle the press. In exchange, they'll ensure your record remains sealed." She stopped walking. "And if I don't? Then you become a headline they can't control." For a long moment, neither spoke. The water lapped against the pier. Somewhere far off, a ship's horn echoed. Finally, Kara said softly, "Tell them I don't need protection. I need peace." Hillman looked at her, really looked, then nodded. "Understood." He walked away, leaving her alone beneath the streetlight, her reflection trembling on the water. The next day, the world moved on. News cycles shifted. Social media found new heroes to praise and new villains to blame. But for those who'd seen the footage, Kara Hastings remained something else. Not a celebrity, not a soldier, but a symbol of calm strength in chaos. At the gym, Mark had framed a small photo of her, grainy security footage of that moment when she stood over Cole, unbroken in the rain. Under it, he'd written a single word: control. Kara didn't visit the gym for weeks. She needed distance. From the noise, from her past, from the spotlight she never wanted. Instead, she volunteered quietly at a local veterans center, teaching self-defense to women who'd lived through their own battles. She never mentioned her rank, never talked about the Navy. She just taught them how to breathe, to move, to survive. And one evening, after class, a young woman approached her, bruised, nervous, but grateful. "You're the woman from the video, aren't you?" she asked softly. Kara smiled faintly. "Maybe. My brother used to hit me," the woman whispered. "But watching you that night, it gave me courage to leave." For a moment, Kara didn't know what to say. She just nodded, quietly moved, and replied, "Then it was worth it." Later that night, Kara sat alone by the pier again. The wind was soft, the sea calm. She pulled her dog tag from her pocket, tracing the engraved letters with her thumb. The past had found her again, but for once, she wasn't running from it. She was learning to live with it, to let it breathe beside her. The waves shimmered in the moonlight, endless and forgiving. She whispered to herself, not a vow this time, but a release. Some battles don't end when the gunfire stops. They end when you stop letting them own you. And as the tide came in, she finally felt it. Not victory, not vengeance, but peace. Real, quiet peace. Morning sunlight poured across the base courtyard, warm and indifferent, as Kara Hastings walked toward the administrative building. Her uniform was pressed, her boots polished, and her composure unshakable. To anyone passing by, she looked like any other officer, steady, precise, calm. But inside, there was a weight pressing on her chest, not from guilt, but from the quiet understanding of how power should be carried. News of the parking lot altercation had spread far beyond the gym. It had reached senior officers, contractors, and civilian networks linked to Navy operations. The 3 men contractors named Reed, Mullins, and Hasker had been suspended pending investigation. They were not just facing potential termination, but blacklisting from all Department of Defense contracts. In the tight-knit world of defense contracting, that was a career death sentence. Kara didn't celebrate it. She didn't post, didn't comment, didn't even acknowledge the gossip that buzzed like static around the base. The people who knew her best men who had served beside her in dust, sweat, and blood understood that her silence spoke volumes. She didn't want revenge. She wanted reflection. Her CO, Commander Lawson, had told her the previous day, "They've asked to meet with you." Mediation, they're calling it. Probably trying to get closure or soften their record before the final report. Kara had paused, then said quietly, "If they're looking for an apology, they won't get one. But if they're looking for understanding, maybe they'll leave with more than they came with." So now, she stood outside the conference room, adjusting the sleeve of her uniform. The door opened. Inside sat the 3 men, looking smaller than she remembered. Gone were their cocky grins and loud laughter. They sat straight-backed, dressed in plain civilian clothes, eyes lowered when she entered. The base legal officer nodded to her, then to them. "We're here for a voluntary mediation. No disciplinary records will be discussed here. The purpose is acknowledgement and resolution." Kara took her seat, folding her hands neatly on the table. Her presence was still controlled, yet it carried the weight of something none of the men could quite name. Reed, the one who had elbowed her, was the first to speak. His voice was low, uncertain. "Ma'am," he began, eyes flicking up, then down again. "We didn't know who you were." "We didn't know?" Kara tilted her head slightly. "Didn't know what, Mr. Reed?" He hesitated. "Didn't know you were Navy, that you were that trained." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity. "So if I hadn't been trained, It would have been fine? Reed swallowed hard. No, ma'am, I didn't mean... Kara's voice cut clean through his fumbling words, quiet but razor-sharp. Respect doesn't depend on rank or muscle, or who wears the uniform. You treat people with dignity because it's right, not because you're afraid of what they can do to you. The room went still. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade. Mullins shifted in his chair, his large frame looking awkward under the weight of shame. We were idiots, he muttered. We were showing off, trying to look tough. Didn't think anyone get hurt. Guess we thought you'd just walk away. Kara let the silence stretch before she answered. You're right. I was walking away. You decided to stop that. She paused, her tone softening slightly. You made a choice in a moment, to prove something to people who don't matter. I've seen that kind of choice before. Overseas, it gets people killed. Here, it just ruins reputations. But the root is the same: ego. The legal officer, sitting quietly at the end of the table, watched with a kind of reverent discomfort. It wasn't often that mediation turned into a moral briefing. Hasker, the youngest of the three, finally looked up. His voice cracked slightly. I just wanted to say sorry, ma'am. For real. I've been thinking about it since that night. My dad's ex-military. He showed me your file after the video came out. He said if he'd ever acted like I did, his CO would have sent him home dishonorably. Something flickered across Kara's expression, almost pity, but not quite. More like recognition. Your apologies noted, she said. But don't say it because you were caught. Say it because you understand. I do, he said, and his eyes didn't waver this time. For a long moment, no one spoke. Kara leaned back, the tension easing from her posture. The three men seemed deflated, not by humiliation, but by the quiet realization that they had underestimated a kind of strength they'd never learned to see before. Finally, Kara stood. You'll all move on from this, she said. You'll work again, somewhere else. But before you do, remember one thing. The world doesn't need more strong men. It needs decent ones. That's rarer. She turned to leave, her boots echoing on the polished floor. Outside the building, the autumn air was sharp and clean. A few junior officers saluted as she passed. She returned each one with crisp precision. Her heart felt lighter, not because she'd won, but because she had reclaimed something far more important: control. Later that evening, she found herself back at the gym. The same rows of weights, the same mirrors, but the atmosphere had changed. The usual laughter and bravado were muted, replaced by quiet nods of respect as she walked in. A few people whispered her name, others simply gave her space. She didn't seek their approval, but she could feel it, the unspoken acknowledgement that power and peace could coexist. As she lifted, her reflection caught her eye in the mirror. There was a faint bruise still fading near her jawline, a ghost of that night's chaos. But there was also something new in her expression: serenity. Not the fragile kind that avoids conflict, but the kind born from surviving it and choosing grace anyway. Halfway through her workout, she noticed Reed enter the gym. He froze when he saw her, clearly unsure whether to stay. Kara gave him a brief nod, not forgiveness, not friendship, but permission. Permission to keep going, to learn, to do better. He nodded back, silently picking a treadmill far from her corner. By the time she finished her set, the tension had faded completely. The air hummed with something else now: balance. As she left, a young enlisted sailor held the door open for her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I saw the video. I just want to say, that was something else." Kara smiled faintly. "Discipline," she said. "It's always something else." The sailor grinned awkwardly, unsure if that was a lesson or a joke. But to Kara, it was both. Back in her car, She sat for a moment, watching the sunset turn the base gold. The world had tested her patience, her control, and her identity, and she had come out of it without losing herself. That was victory enough. As the engine started and she pulled away, her mind drifted back to the three men, their eyes full of shame and awakening. Maybe they'd change. Maybe they wouldn't. But at least now, they knew what real strength looked like. It didn't yell. It didn't hit first. It stood tall, walked away, and never forgot who it was. And for Lieutenant Kara Hastings, that was the legacy worth leaving behind. The early morning fog hovered over the harbor, softening the jagged outlines of ships and cranes. Kara Hastings stood at the edge of the pier, hands tucked into the pockets of her raincoat, watching the water move in endless, patient rhythm. The world felt larger here, broader, more forgiving. Yet she knew life didn't reward patience. It tested it, again and again. And she had passed, in ways more meaningful than any medal or headline. The past few weeks had been surreal. News cycles had moved on, social media attention had waned, and the men who had humiliated her were facing the consequences of their actions, some in public, some quietly behind closed doors. Yet for Kara, none of that mattered. What mattered was the quiet strength she had reclaimed, the control she had exercised when it counted most. Her phone buzzed, displaying a message from the Navy liaison. "Agent Hillman, your discretion and composure have been noted. There's a potential assignment if you're interested." "It's sensitive." She stared at the text for a long moment, considering it. The missions overseas, the life she had built in Norfolk, the calm she had fought so hard to maintain, they were all pieces of a balance she didn't want to disrupt lightly. Instead of replying immediately, she slipped the phone back into her pocket and walked toward the edge of the pier. The tide rolled gently under the dock, carrying reflections of the cloudy sky. She breathed deeply, letting the salt air fill her lungs. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of peace without obligation. Her mind drifted back to the night of the confrontation. The fear she had seen in Cole Datter's eyes, the desperate movements of his friends, the thunder echoing across the parking lot, all of it had played out in slow motion in her mind countless times. But unlike a memory meant to haunt, this one brought clarity. Every action she had taken had been measured, deliberate, precise. Not for glory, not for vengeance, but because that was what she had been trained to do, and because that was who she was. In the days that followed, she began volunteering at the local Veterans Center again. She taught self-defense classes to women and young service members. Each time she demonstrated a technique, she emphasized not strength, but discipline, control, and awareness. Many students asked her about the incident, the viral video. She always replied the same way. Strength isn't about who hits first. Strength is knowing when not to. Some nodded, some frowned, and some stared in awe. But each left a little stronger than they had come, carrying a lesson that Kara hoped would ripple farther than any headline could. One afternoon, a young Marine veteran approached her after class. She was slight in stature, but walked with a quiet confidence. "Ma'am," she said, "I watched the video. I've been in situations where I felt powerless. Seeing you stand your ground, it gave me hope." Kara crouched slightly, meeting her gaze. "Hope isn't enough without practice," she said softly. "But it's a start, and it's something you carry with you, always." The girl smiled, a flicker of courage lighting her expression. "Thank you." Kara nodded, watching her walk away. In that moment, she realized her story was no longer about a viral video or viral fame. It had become something quieter, deeper. A lesson in courage, restraint, and dignity. Back at her apartment, she arranged her small collection of dog tags, medals, and photographs. Among them, A faded picture of Caleb and her team in Afghanistan caught her eye. She touched it gently, a silent tribute to the sacrifices that had shaped her life. The past wasn't gone. The memories of firefights, losses, and fear lingered, shadows in the corners of her mind. But unlike before, these shadows no longer controlled her. She had learned to walk alongside them, to acknowledge their presence without letting them define her. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she returned to the pier one last time. The sky was painted with streaks of purple and gold, reflecting on the water like molten glass. She leaned against the railing, hands gripping the cold metal, feeling the pull of the tide beneath her. In the distance, a small group of sailors jogged past, laughing and carrying equipment. She watched them, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. This was the life she had fought to protect, not just her own, but the integrity and spirit of those around her. A soft vibration in her pocket reminded her of the text from Hillman. She checked it. Navy Command has reviewed your discretion and conduct. They're impressed. They believe you're ready for specialized work, should you choose it. Kara stared at the message for several long moments. The weight of choice pressed down gently on her shoulders. She could step back into the world of classified operations, danger, and responsibility, or she could continue the quieter path she had carved in Norfolk, teaching, mentoring, and living deliberately. She typed a brief reply, then deleted it. There would be time for that decision later. For now, she simply pocketed the phone and exhaled slowly. The fog had begun to lift completely, revealing the horizon. And in that clarity, she felt it, not triumph over men, not headlines or recognition, but the rarest kind of victory, a victory over fear, over impulse, over expectation. Weeks passed. Kara continued her work at the Veterans Center, and her presence became a quiet legend. The young women she trained carried her lessons into their lives, sharing them in ways she never anticipated. A ripple effect, small but enduring. She often returned to the pier in the early mornings. Standing there, the wind tugging at her jacket and the tide rolling in like a steady heartbeat, she would whisper lessons to herself, not secrets, not commands, but truths forged through experience. Control is strength. Patience is power. Peace is earned, not given. And each time, she felt the weight of the world lift a little more. She had faced chaos, arrogance, and violence, and had emerged not only unbroken, but stronger, calmer, and wiser. One evening, as the sun set in fiery streaks over the water, a young girl approached the pier, notebook in hand. "Excuse me," she said timidly. "Are you Kara Hastings?" Kara turned, her reflection mirrored in the golden water. "Maybe," she replied. The girl hesitated, then held up her notebook. "I want to write about you, about how you handled those men, about how you didn't just fight. You controlled yourself." Kara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then write it," she said softly. "Tell the truth, not the story people want to hear. Tell the story that matters." The girl nodded, eyes shining, and ran off down the pier. Kara watched her go, feeling the passing of knowledge, the quiet continuation of her influence. As night fell over Norfolk, Kara Hastings returned to her apartment, dog tags in hand, the echoes of waves still ringing in her ears. She placed the trinkets carefully on her shelf, lit a candle, and sat down with a journal she had started keeping. Her story, her real story, wouldn't be in headlines, viral videos, or fleeting fame. It would live in the lessons she passed on, the courage she inspired, the control she exemplified. That was the kind of legacy worth leaving. Outside, the city lights twinkled, the harbor boats rocked gently, and the tide whispered secrets only the patient could hear. Kara exhaled, feeling a rare and precious stillness. She had survived. She had prevailed. And in the quiet, she had finally found peace. Some battles, she whispered to herself, are won not with force, but with mastery of self. The night embraced her like an old friend, steady and unwavering, and for the first time in a long time, Kara Hastings felt complete. She turned toward the water, letting the calm settle in her bones. And there, in the quiet glow of dawn and dusk intertwined, she knew she had truly won, not over men or circumstance or fear, but over the chaos itself.